What is up, Texans Nation? I am fired up today because we need to have a serious talk about the backbone of our offense heading into 2026. We all know our star receiver is a game changer when he is on the field, but a worrying situation is developing regarding our depth that could define our entire season. Can we actually survive if our top playmaker misses time? The answer might surprise you, and it involves some massive question marks behind the scenes. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel to keep up with all the daily updates on our team. Let's dive in. Nico Collins stands at the center of the Houston Texans' 2026 offensive outlook as the undisputed premier target for C.J. Stroud. Yet his persistent injury history casts a shadow over the entire wide receiver rotation. While Collins possesses the elite size and physicality required to dominate defensive backs, the recurring nature of his time spent on the sidelines has become a defining concern for the team. Every season, the Texans are forced to navigate critical stretches without their top playmaker, an instability that places an immense amount of pressure on the remaining depth chart. The reliance on Collins is absolute, but the fragility shown in his recent injury track record forces the organization to face the reality that a single setback could fundamentally alter the trajectory of the passing game. The team has constructed one of the most talented rosters across the entire AFC, but the drop-off in production whenever Collins is not on the field is stark. Fans and analysts alike recognize that the high ceiling potential of this offense is tethered to his availability, making the status of his health the most significant storyline as the team enters the 2026 campaign. Without him, the collective group lacks the same intimidation factor, turning the spotlight toward the unproven players tasked with filling the void. It is a precarious situation, as the team's postseason ambitions depend on maintaining efficiency regardless of who is lining up on the perimeter. Every snap that Collins is forced to miss requires the supporting cast to elevate their game, turning the wideout rotation into a focal point of scrutiny. It is time to see if the depth can finally step up when it matters most, or if the team's success will remain hostage to the durability of their primary weapon in this high-stakes season. The concerns regarding the supporting cast were recently highlighted by Bill Barnwell, who pointed out that the current rotation beyond the WR1 position remains largely unproven and inconsistent. While Jaden Higgins showcased potential during his rookie season by hauling in 6 touchdowns, his overall efficiency, measured by yards per route run, suggests he is still developing. Similarly, Jalen Noel has provided flashes of talent, yet both players have yet to prove they can shoulder the heavy lifting of a primary target if the situation calls for it. The inclusion of Tank Dell adds another layer of complexity to the narrative. Before his career-threatening knee injury, Dell was a dynamic, explosive element that perfectly complemented Stroud's passing style, but projecting an immediate return to that level of production remains a significant gamble. Expecting a player recovering from such a catastrophic injury to replicate his previous impact is an analytical reach, further thinning the margin for error. Why does this matter right now for the team? Because the 2026 season demands a reliable secondary and tertiary option to prevent defenses from bracket covering Collins. If these younger receivers cannot consistently win their one-on-one matchups or move the chains, the entire offensive structure becomes predictable and easier to contain. The pressure on Higgins, Noel, and the recovery progress of Dell is amplified by the fact that the Texans are expected to be serious contenders. Depth is not just a luxury. It is a necessity for a team with championship-level expectations. The inability of the bench to provide dependable production forces the offense into a state of fragility, where one missed game from a starter could derail an entire week of preparation. The team needs more than just flashes. They need sustained consistency from every player in the rotation to ensure the passing attack stays lethal regardless of the injury report status. The internal challenge facing the Texans revolves around the rapid development of younger players in a high-pressure environment. Jaden Higgins is expected to make a significant leap in his second year, moving from a red zone specialist into a more well-rounded threat capable of handling a heavier volume of targets. If he can improve his efficiency metrics, he would provide the stability that the rotation currently lacks. Simultaneously, Jalen Noel is working to refine his route running and catch efficiency to become a more reliable asset for Stroud in the intermediate passing game. These two represent the future of the position, but they are being pushed into the spotlight faster than perhaps initially anticipated due to the volatility surrounding the wide receiver group. The narrative surrounding Tank Dell is arguably the most sensitive aspect of the 2026 season. His journey back from a career-threatening injury is being monitored closely, as his return would provide an immediate boost to the team's explosive play potential. However, the organization must be cautious not to overload his workload too early. This balancing act, nurturing the growth of Higgins and Noel while managing the physical limitations of Dell, is the primary task for the coaching staff. If these players can coalesce into a functional unit, the offense will have the diversity needed to combat sophisticated defensive schemes. If they struggle, the burden on Collins will only increase, potentially shortening his availability even further. It is a cycle of dependency that the Texans are working to break through internal growth and smart roster management. Success in 2026 depends on whether these unproven commodities can transform into legitimate playmakers who can keep the chains moving when the defense decides to double-team the primary threat on the outside. Analyzing the current depth chart leads to a logical conclusion. The Texans are banking on internal improvement rather than major external additions to secure the position. This approach places a massive amount of weight on the shoulders of the coaching staff to extract maximum value from the current roster. The reliance on unproven depth is not inherently a failure of planning, but rather a calculation that players like Higgins have the ceiling to become starters. However, the margin for error is razor-thin. If the wideout group fails to produce at a league average level when Collins is dealing with his typical injury setbacks, the team's ability to sustain drives will suffer significantly. The objective facts are clear. This is a talented group that is fundamentally fragile. The 2026 season will serve as a definitive test for this wide receiver room to see if they can evolve from a collection of flashes into a cohesive, reliable unit. The impact of this development is not just about stats. It is about keeping the offense on the field and controlling the clock. If the depth can consistently win one-on-one matchups, it opens up the entire playbook for Stroud. If they cannot, the offense will likely stagnate, forcing the team to rely on other facets of their roster. It is a critical juncture for a team that has already established itself as a force in the AFC. Every practice rep for Noel and every snap for Higgins is essentially a rehearsal for when the inevitable happens. The question remains whether they have the technical polish to step into larger roles without a drop-off in production. For now, the fans wait and watch the progression, hoping the team finds its stride before the schedule gets tough. It is finally Toro time. Looking ahead, the recovery and growth of these players will dictate the ceiling for the Houston offense in the coming months. The focus remains on whether the collective output of the secondary receivers can provide enough insurance against the inherent risks associated with the wide receiver room. As the season progresses, the production metrics for Higgins and Noel will be the most significant indicator of whether the front office's faith in the roster was justified. The team has the talent to compete with anyone in the league, but the durability of the rotation is the single greatest obstacle to achieving that potential. Any sign of improvement in yardage per route run or third down conversion rates from the younger group would provide a much-needed buffer for the team's star players. Conversely, any extended period where the offense is forced to perform without a fully healthy rotation will expose the vulnerabilities that have been discussed throughout the offseason. The pressure to perform is building with every game on the schedule, and there is no room for a slow start when the team has championship aspirations. The coaching staff is clearly committed to this group, giving them the reps necessary to gain the experience that only live game action can provide. This trial-by-fire approach is risky but potentially rewarding if the players respond with the expected development. Ultimately, the Texans have built a squad that is capable of greatness, provided they can manage the realities of the professional game. The season ahead is a gauntlet, and the ability of these supporting players to handle the increased load will determine if this roster can reach its full potential. Stay tuned as we continue to track the developments of this crucial position group throughout the 2026 season. Make sure to subscribe to follow the latest updates and analysis on the Texans.